but this is Ken Hargreaves, VK for AKH, who has constructed this. I'm thinking of a line from Odd Andrew Shot. I'm not going to say it. But it's constructed. It's constructed this wonderful Dobsonian telescope, and so Ken's going to walk us through that tonight. And then...
Good. Before I start, how many people of you have actually tried to build a telescope, or success or not? Look, I'll keep my talk down a bit. Don't be insulted by that, but that's probably a better way to do it. So I've got that. I started with a funny point. You know about Heath Robinson and Rube Goldberg, don't you? Oh, yeah. They both of them do complicated, simple things by complicated methods. Probably like me. This is a Dobsonian telescope. Lots of telescopes, especially the big ones, are what they call equatorial mountings. This Dobsonian is an alt-azimuth. Altitude, height, azimuth, compass direction. And the other ones, of course, the beauty of this one is that line there, which is the polar axis, and it goes like that, is actually parallel to the axis of the Earth. So as Earth rotates, this thing compensates. So you can actually point it at a particular angle with this polar axis, and then you can drive just one of them and it will follow. So it's much easier to computerise one of those than one of these. Although we were talking to this about this earlier on, and we said, okay, why not take a video and combine the images? And it works well, doesn't it? Yeah, just on anything like that even. So, okay, let's go to our next. I started by building a telescope. I made this mirror in 1963. No, Doug? In 1963, the year I was married and the year I was nearly divorced. To make one of those, to grind it, polish it and figure it, takes around about 25 hours. If you want to do an 8-inch, it'll probably take you about 35, and that's taking out the times for a cup of tea. So it is, you've got a lot of things to do. I found this, but I reckon that's a mirror, that's what they call a mirror blank. That's what they make them out of, a piece of Pyrex like that. And what you have with that, and another piece of glass, plate glass about that thick, which is called a tool. You fit the tool on a board like that, and you get this and you put grit between it, a special grit, and you just go round and round like that, and slowly you hollow out the middle of it. And I won't go into any more detail than that, but that's how that mirror is ground. Hours and hours of going around this, maybe a 44-gallon drum or something on it like that. So that's how it's done. Now, this thing, of course, once I built that thing, I wanted to make it a junk collector's delight, which it was. Let's take it a little further. Hope I'm going the right way. Yeah, here we are. Now, this tripod was an army dumpy level stand. I had close to a disposals place. This was a Bofors anti-aircraft gun sight mount. The Bofors was there. Of course, somebody had, disabled it with a what do you call them? Oxytorch. Cut it so it wouldn't be. But I got that, so that's there. There, that's a plumber's T-piece, and in the middle of the plumber's T-piece, I've got some capillary fittings, which are brass, and rimmed them out. So it would take this, which is a Morris Minor rocker shaft. And this is a great big axle. We don't know where it came from, but it was big and heavy, and that did us. So this was a junk collector's delight. Now, what's wrong with it? Why did I go with that? It did me for, something like about 20, 30 years. But, there was always something wrong. If you try and set that to try and view something up above you, you haven't got a hope. Tripod's in the way. the tube carriage fouls it. I've only got this little screw that secures it, so it's not very fine adjustable. And also, that rocker shaft could have been about 20 centimetres longer, and it might have balanced the tube properly because it wasn't balanced. So in all that was that, and I was not perfectly satisfied with it. I came across an article in a December 2001 Sky and Telescope of this Barry Ledger, a Canadian guy, who'd made that. Now, I've lost the book. I've lost the magazine and I don't know where it is. But it was, you can see that it's fairly easily buildable and can be pulled apart. And this one, his was a 8-inch. You might even notice that that may not be quite parallel with the base. But that doesn't matter because you collimate the telescope and that fixes that. But nevertheless, they had, the rest of that article had dimensions, lengths and so forth. I got the right stuff to do it with. It worked out well. And that's what I made in those days. And so there's mine. You see the cake tins are very essential there. I've got one here. That protects the mirror as such. There we are. So you can see there is a mirror there. I think probably this way would be better to see it, I think. So what happened? Yeah, I won't shoot you. Okay. Yeah. Anyhow, he designed it for an 8 or a 12-inch mirror. I used a 6-inch from the old telescope, that one there. And so it's all made from 15mm plywood with nice hoop pine surface. And it was easy to get. But anyhow, getting these truss tubes right was a bit of a problem. The original one I did that way. You can see where the mirror is and where the focus is and so forth like that. And it's really a guesswork job. So, oh, there we are, I've gone one too far there. Now, the bearings, this stuff is a kitchen laminate, ebony star laminate. It's called Laminex. And that white thing there is a piece of, what do you call that stuff? Teflon. Teflon, quite dense stuff. You ever felt so? It's like a piece of metal, it's so dense. And you have some mirror adjusting screws there, and that's a counterweight, which we've got under here. You've still got the counterweights here, as I remember. Yeah, the screws and the counterweights on the back. Now the beauty about this ebony star, swap left. Yep. You can see that this is the stuff. That was white on a dark one, and that was an American ad, but I found that I could get that stuff in Newcastle as long as I got a sheet that wide by about that high. You can see how much I used. Anyhow, it's a knobbly surface, but the beautiful part was that I knew a kitchen renovator. And of course that helped quite a lot to get a few scraps. You can see underneath, you probably, I don't know whether you can see too much of that because that's there, but under there's a sheet, and that sheet sits on 3 Teflon pieces, blocks like that. So that's the azimuth bearings. Righto. There's how the mirror was on. Like all the mirrors that we do here, that I do, there are faults. Not perfect at all.
So it's happening again, coming in here.
Yeah, like the mirrors, there's imperfections. This was pointed out to me, and I know, you know, I was aware of it roughly anyhow, but you can get these things silvered at Siding Spring. Every August, the great big 4-metre telescope mirror is taken off, that, the biggest telescope in Australia, taken off, washed carefully, dried carefully, and put in a vacuum chamber. In that vacuum chamber are aluminium arcs like that. and they pump out the air, set the aluminium arcs off, aluminium all over the place rests on the mirror and silvers it. And if any other mirrors happen to be in the same vacuum chamber, they'll get silvered too, like that one did. That's how it was last silvered. But one thing that was definitely pointed out to me, if you look at that, the edge is sort of hazy. That is mainly because there are still some large pits in that from grinding. I hadn't ground out all the pits at the edge. I ground it and figured it and polished it, and you can see where that is. You can see in this where you can see the haziness there on that mirror. That was the 6-inch mirror. It's fuzzy because of the deep pits that were still there. The general effect is that the background is a lot lighter than you'd like it to be when you're looking down the telescope. That's the worst of that. Now, I had to go El Cheapo at that stage too, and I used my optics were 0.98 inch. That's a Kellner 25mm low power one, but that was the sort of thing that fitted. And of course, you notice that it's got a little curve there like that because it's supposed to be made to be fitted on a cylindrical thing. Well, okay, so a lot of things that left me dissatisfied. We had to do lots of fine adjustments. I wanted an 8-inch mirror, not a 6-inch. I was going to save up for it because I wasn't going to own another one. I'd buy it. And I wanted to make the focus and so forth 1 1/4 inch instead, which is a standard. Meanwhile, that one I could use. Let's go forward 20 years to 2022. My kids talked me into this by buying me a $400 mirror. That's what they got. So this is it, the $400 parabolic mirror, f5.9, 8-inch. Very nice. And they bought it, they put together and bought it for me birthday present. You say, okay, Dad, the rest's up to you. Oh. But that was really good because, you know, that's what I'd been thinking of too. So, okay. Well, I'd had this thing out in the back al fresco, and you can see where the weather had actually got to that. It was really showing the ravages of time. The lid of the cake tin was rusted and all that sort of thing. The lengths wouldn't have been right either. So I had things to do. So eyepiece holder and eyepieces. I might have to get new eyepieces and new eyepiece holder. 1 1/4 inch instead of 0.98 inch. The diagonal, I'm going to have a different diagonal because I've got a different mirror. It's a secondary call. Struts, I'd have to redo the struts. And I'd have to put turnbuckles down the bottom. I thought turnbuckles first, but I forgot the turnbuckles have 2 threads, one left hand and one right hand. And that mucked it up for me, so I wasn't able to use turnbuckles. I'd have to organise the mirror mount. I need a larger cake tin. And the surface of the wood were weathered. I had to revarnish all that. So there was a fair bit to be done. So first thing we did was to mount the mirror in a cell. That is a piece of metal, circular piece of metal that came with the mirror. And it has some cork mounts on the bottom there, and you can see these 3 clips on the top that hold it in. So mounting it on a 19mm piece of circular timber was pretty good. Let's go a little further. Right, well, the first attempt I made on this were the struts. And look, they were 12mm tube. And it was just too weak and too flimsy. And the angle brackets were on the inside and they should have been on the outside. I could have got some more Tasmanian oak, but 8 of those at $10 each amounts to a fair bit of money. So I used the old rod. That's the old rod with the extension. Now, this is what I ended up with. Oh, the 12 millimetre tubing won't go to waste. It looks like a pretty good 7-element beam, 2 metres. So I won't waste it. So the actual length of the struts were very much a guessing game. And even sometimes I had to cut some off. 8 of them. I kept one. So we're adjusting, but I thought, right, I'm going to have it completely adjusted, so adjustable. So I had these rods, timber. This was put into, I think, 15, 16 millimetre tubing. Now in the bottom of the tubing, what you can't see there is the little white bits there. That is PVC pipe, but you can't get PVC pipe that small. So what you do, you cut a couple of slits on it and heat it so it comes in to a smaller tube. So they're the tubes, and in that case I was able to put these 10 millimetre long pieces. I just bought one long piece of 10 millimetre or M10 threaded rod and about 16 nuts. One for pudding, one for a lock nut.
So where did you get that 10 metre rod from? Where did you get that from?
Bunnings.
Bunnings.
Bunnings, yeah.
Bunnings usually have a wrap going through the rod at the end of the
Yeah, it's down the end of the down the end of the nuts and bolts, isn't it? Yeah. So righto, you can see a new 1 1/4 inch focuser there, and the same problem, of course. If you look at this closely, I'll turn it. No, I don't know whether you can turn it around this way. You can see that it is also designed to go on a tube. Can you see how it goes up and over there? I'm not sure whether that shows up very well, but it's supposed to go on a tube. And here I was. I went to a. Where did I get that? Oh, I was looking at aluminium places for a piece of this right angle. I went all round. I got to not Deception Bay, a bit closer than that, Lipscomb Road anyhow, around there, if you know Lipscomb Road in Moreton Downs. And somebody, as a last resort, I went to this place that put trays on trucks, aluminium trays on trucks, and they cut me one. Just right, beautiful. It was great. So that sort of solved that. Now the last job on the list was, of course, aligning the axis, called collimating. And you can do it with a little eyepiece with a little hole in the tiny hole in the end, or you can get one of these. I bought this, it's called a Cheshire collimator, and you put that in your eyepiece. And I haven't even taken the eyepiece protection, the secondary protection off. I thought it was great dust proofing, this one. Peanut butter jar. Just with a bit cut down the side. Yeah, so that keeps the dust off that one too. But collimating, trying to get those things all lined up. And it's something you have to continually do. You know, it's like a guitar, it goes out of tune. Like this one, it goes out of tune too, and you get a collimator and you straighten it up. The secondary, this thing, that's the touchy one. You've got, I'll put that around, you've got 3 screws there plus a central screw. The central screw tightens it. The 3 other screws are the adjustment. Now, that's very, very touchy, much more touchy than this. Those 3 screws, you know, just a 1/8 of a turn will put you right off. It is really very difficult, that I found. Okay, to align the bottom of the mirror, you've got 3 wing nuts, and you've got that looks better than I could show you here. But you've got these 3 wing nuts. That goes to the base of the mirror cell, and you've got these 3, they're valve springs. I don't know what car they're off, but you know, they're valve springs, and they've got about the right tension. So that's the way that worked. So that tension to valve springs. Okay, the other thing was that I found that when I made these truss rods what I thought was right, the image came to the edge. It has to come to out 30 centimetres, so I had to cut more off there and muck around and adjust these things until I got the image to come out exactly 30 centimetres out here, because that's where your image should be. There we are. So you know you've got to move that back and forth. Terrible if you had a tube. You'd think you'd have to know it beforehand, wouldn't you? I haven't got a collection of eyepieces. I've got a one which is a low power one, 32 millimetres, and this one is I haven't really tried it yet, but it's 7 to 21 millimetres, and it's a zoom. I'm looking forward to doing that. The finder.
What sort of eyepieces are they?
The first one was a Plosal. I don't know what the other one is.
They're not Virginian ones,
No, we'll go back. See, that's that one. But this one, I don't know. That's the brand, Chinese brand. That it just says a zoom. It doesn't say what sort, whether it's a Kellner or a Houdinian or whatever eyepiece. So, righto, finders. This finder I found was a beauty. It's made out of the lenses from binoculars. You can see the bit where I shaved the bit off there. I filed that off, and the eyepiece. Now the binoculars, really good. I won't pull it apart, but it's got one of the prisms in there. Binoculars have two. One of the prisms, and on the bottom, just the other day I found out this. You just get a piece of acetate sheet, cut it to the right size, draw a pin through each, and you've got crosshairs, and it works beautifully. All I have to do is line it up with this. I haven't done that yet. I haven't had enough time. Thing about living in North Lakes is, I think that the furthest thing I can get is about 200 metres away, and it's a light pole on the other side of some house, and that's the furthest thing I can get, and even that's not far enough. But there's another one. This one I got 20 years ago, and this is called a quick finder. Now, it's not complete anymore, and I'm not sure whether Rigel systems in California have it, because that thing has a tendency to break. It's just a little piece of perspex, and a little piece of perspex sits in there, and what you do, you sit on there, you look at the star, and you turn this on, and it's got a little LED circle on it. Yeah, you'd have to pick it up and come up here and have a look at it. But that's another type of finder. But another one was suggested to me was to put something like Skyview, which is a planetarium program, on that, which gives you the constellation, the stars and everything, and then make a slot for it like that, so you could look exactly where it is and point to that particular star, and you know what constellation it's in and everything. That would be very, very handy. I'd like to do that. And I've got a second one of these with a slightly crazed screen. The crazed screen's not going to bother me, and it's there to be used. So there we are. So still a lot of adjustment. As I say, it's like a guitar. You've got to tune it. But all the things I've got to do next. I could go out to the boondocks and have a look at, use that. Of course, I'll do that anyhow sometime. But all the things I had to put off while I did this darn telescope. I've got missing channels on the 817, both repeaters. I've mucked them up somehow, and I haven't got the right programming cable. I've got it on order. I've an antenna tuner, which is 3/4 done and not finished. I've got to retune my fan dipole before cycle 20 ties over. Play a bit more FT8. Gary showed me what was wrong with the 7800 2-metre FM set and the programming of it, and I haven't done it yet. And then with the unused aluminium struts, 2 metre beam. Now I know that you are all problem solvers. That's what we're in amateur radio for, to solve problems, when you come to think of it. And we come up with some brilliant solutions as well. And I think that's just great. But there we are. That talk only lasted 30 minutes, but still, I'm happy to take any questions or anything like that, or you can come and have a look at things by any means. Help yourself. Thanks, everyone.